to audience, particularly how it's changed over the last few decades from that sort of a young guy we were talking about. So we'll maybe look at this in two ways. We'll look at it as the huge growth of the female gamer, and then we'll sort of look at some of the consumption habits of people in a sort of a foreign markets. We've sort of touched upon the rise of mobile gaming in APAC, which I was ignorant of until earlier this day. So Charlotte, I'll post you a question, and it is, could you sort of talk us through the history of how gaming has accommodated to women and sort of how the games have been developed in that space? We ran a bit of a piece last week on this very subject, and I found it very interesting just how even the depictions of women in games has changed to sort of broaden the appeal, and it's a bit less sexist and toxic and all of that thing.
Yeah, I think I suppose the biggest shift is you have more female developers and programmers now working on titles. So as you promote diversity within the industry, you're only going to promote the diversity of storylines and narratives that are coming through. I think Horizon Zero Dawn was a great example of having a female protagonist who wasn't, over fetishized or sexualized in any way. And also she, she wasn't there was no condescension for her because of her sex in the storyline. She was just a powerful woman throughout. And I think if you look at the studio that developed that game, I think it's got quite a lot of female representation on the dev team. So I think that's going to change over time. Whereas if you look back at sort of the days of Lara Croft and her, I think, body shape over the time, and, it's very obvious kind of probably who was developing those kind of games. So I think also, as gaming enters the mainstream more, I've got a lot of friends that I know watch the Witcher series on Netflix, for example, and were then really interested by the game. So, suddenly it's like, actually, I'd like to learn more about the universe and where this came from. So they picked up and downloaded The Witcher, to play, having watched the series. So I think, and also it is becoming less of a, certainly for me growing up, it was a thing that boys mainly did. At university, you go to parties, boys would be sat playing FIFA, COD. It was very rare for a girl to feel comfortable to join in because it was something boys do. Whereas now I think actually if you talk to, teenagers and you look at Fortnite and sort of the profile of that, it is becoming more mainstream among girls as well. And then mobile, I think, there's always lots of stats around, however many percentage of gamers are women, and that mainly comes from the mobile segment. I think mobile probably lowered the barrier to entry, for some people as well. So, it's a little bit easier. Most people have a phone, they can probably pick up a game and then think, oh, actually, I would be interested in, trying this out on a console or, something like that if there's a similar type of game. But yeah, I think I look forward to, I think as more young girls come through and look at programming and development and gaming as a career option, I think the storylines will change, and there'll be more sort of women will be able to relate to them more, rather than in the past where they probably were a little bit unrelatable and not representative.
More women in the writing room is a good start. I think The Last of Us 2 is now Ellie is the protagonist. Hopefully that's not a spoiler for you, Charlotte. We're now going to look at the demographics around the world and how sort of gaming is very different in different regions. I guess one way to look at that is the sort of the preferences of games between, say, Japan and America. It's historically the JRPG against sort of the more violent titles. You even hear of the anecdotes of the Japanese developers making games easier for people in the West. I wonder if anyone can sort of talk me through the differences around the world.
I'll take a shot at one at least. So there's a big difference between gaming in Korea and gaming in Japan. Specifically, Korea is really set up for Korea game cafes. It's just a thing you do there. It's built into the culture. It's the most fun thing in the whole world. Go get a pot of noodles and sit down in a private booth on a high-end gaming rig and just play away on your account. All while people bring you drinks and food. It's awesome. I don't know why we don't do this everywhere. And then in Japan, it's much more mobile, and partly because of the size of space. You just don't have the console, big screen television at home. Doing things on your mobile is about the best way to do there. So you'll see a bigger switch in mobile there. And then India is another one. We were doing, if you've ever been in video game development, you're trying to get like support or technical teams. When you look at India and Singapore, significantly different in the way that they view and appreciate games. where Singapore is much more Western style, like the way that we think about games and how we play games. So getting those teams to work on a game is pretty straightforward, where India was much more a fit for market kind of solution because they play games very differently. The broadband is limited there, and even mobile games, you're looking more at web-based mobile web type games than you are in full downloads because they just didn't have the throughput to download an entire giant app. So yeah, the whole world is just a mix mash depending on what the cultural norms are, and also some of the realities of physical space too. So Japan's a good example of physical space impacting the norm there.
No difficult peripheral swinging PlayStation moves or guitar.
Yeah, I don't see the Oculus Rift and the remotes really taking off in the tiny rooms in Japan, but I could be wrong.
That's very interesting. That's another sort of nuance that marketers will need.